Well, as we said last time, I would give a little gift as I do, like little coins, and this time I've gotten some earrings made. This one's from, these are terracotta beads that are 3,000 years old. I have gold and silver. I have one person who's wearing a set. Would you like to show the crowd what they look like?
Oh, they're lovely.
Oh, yes, yeah, of course. Yes.
And
Now-
then you've got yours
Are you gonna
on.
walk around so we can test them?
I'm gonna, would you like me to pass these out now or later? Because you can pick them up, I'm not gonna pass them by, I don't know whether it's gold or silver. So I have one for all the ladies here. So would you pass that box around and let everybody like put their hand in and pick, oops. Each lady may have one. Oh, I got an extra one here.
Really?
Here we go.
Nope.
And on the back, they're made, I had a woman in England, in Chester, made them for me. And she does this as a hobby.
Oh my.
So I thought, you know, what a nice little thing to have. And the beads are, this color in these beads will never fade. I can't say about the silver and the gold.
Did you get one? They're lovely. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, this is lovely.
Everybody have one?
I told my daughter about
Nope.
this. I said, well, we're going
Learn
to
it and then eat
we're
it.
going to the Egans again. I said, we're learning about Egypt this time. And she said, Mom, you are so lucky to know somebody like that.
What if I do the crown jewels next time?
Please do.
Okay?
Do we get, will we get a sample then?
You know, if I do another one of these, I don't know at this point what I would do with them. But if somebody has a suggestion and I got another little gift for
What
you.
one's in behind it?
We got Anita back there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get one? I did.
Where do you want one?
Oh, just probably mine.
Should we take one of
Oh,
these?
I so pretty.
Should we, Ed, should we take one of these?
No, that's just explaining it. The woman that makes these in England buys the beads from a man in
Did
Florida.
Beryl get one?
And that's
Yeah,
how
mine
they
are
put
on, they're on.
I hope you like
Oh,
what,
okay.
the only suggestion that they say is that these are made out of terracotta type thing, so if you put them away, try to keep them in the box. Because they,
Draw moisture.
no, but they're, you know, they haven't been destroyed in 3,000 years. All right, so when I put this thing together, I said to myself, where do I start?
Would you rather have it dollars?
Yeah. Because if everyone, wait.
In the beginning. All right, well, there is so much information to think about when you do ancient Egypt, because you have 4,500 years ago when they built the Great Pyramid, and this is today. They only in the 1800s discovered what the stuff was. For years, they couldn't read the language. They didn't know who built the buildings. They didn't know who built the pyramids. They didn't know the names of the pharaohs, the queens, the cities, or anything else. It was all lost. And then if you remember my first lecture, I talked about Napoleon bringing his troops to fight in Egypt. And he won the battle, and he had his troops keep busy after the war. You don't let them sit around. So one of the things he had them do was start cleaning up things. Example, he dug up the Sphinx because it was covered. He did not shoot the nose. Everybody had, you know, cannon shot the Sphinx's nose off. Not true. Not true. Secondly, there was a fort, the city of Rosetta, where he wanted to rebuild the fort. So his soldiers started breaking the stones, and they came across, let's see which one, the Rosetta Stone. And they knew it was under a step, and they brought it up. It's about so tall, that thick. It's in the British Museum. And they had no idea it was hieroglyphics, but they didn't call it hieroglyphics. They didn't know what it was. And it was a demonic language and Greek. Well, Napoleon, of course, took it back to France. Aha, what happens? 1814, Napoleon loses. The British come over and take it and put it in the British Museum. So, with that, after Napoleon's defeat, no Egyptology. There was a man, where is he was, there's a picture of him, Jean-Francois Champion. He was the man who was a linguist. He was a French linguist, a student, brilliant. I mean, he spoke all the ancient languages, and he was able to get into the top language school in Paris. And of course, the arrogant professor said, well, what do you want to learn? He said, I'd love to learn language that Christ spoke. He said, oh, Arabic, I speak that. So, did not have the greatest time, because he was brighter than most. So, he had the idea, if I could break this code, we could find out all this information. Because nobody knew, nobody ever heard of King Tut. Never, nobody. Well, the British Museum had the stone, and they were not going to share it with anybody. So they had two of the famous linguists of the time, who were not connected with the British Museum, but they gave a gigantic office to, all the money they needed, anything they wanted, they had. Francois Champion had nothing. They happened to make some copies of this stone. Rolled some ink on it and did. He got a copy. So it took him years, I mean years, to decipher that. And the British were doing everything because they wanted to be first. Well, he beat them, and he copied it. And he has the credit for it. He's not even listed in the books as one of the first Egyptologists. He wasn't a qualified man, you know, he was just a linguist. The second man. This guy I love. Giovanni Belzoni. Giovanni was an Italian who immigrated to England. He was 6'6", and he was a strong man in the circus. But he taught himself engineering. I mean, how do you do that? He was a bright guy, taught himself, married an English gal, and he got tired of being in the circus. I mean, and he said to his wife, look, they kind of broke the code, and we kind of understand a little bit now. Well, let's go to Egypt. Because I can use some of my engineering to help them with their water, moving the dams and such things. So he packs up his family and he goes to Cairo. Now, the situation with his building the dams and he helping it did not really go well. He finished up early and did not get it. So he's walking down the street one day, this tall guy with a big hat on, with his wife, and he comes across the corner and there's a guy saying, I say, old man, in Arab gear, are you Belzoni? Roger Hampton, English Department of. He said, the English governor general would like to talk to you. He said, me, what about what? He said, well, we'd like to use you to help us. You have an engineering degree, or engineering, self-engineering. You know the things. We'd like to employ you. He said, but I got a suggestion. Get rid of the Western clothes. Start wearing clothes that look Egyptian. Because look at down the street. There are people following you with knives ready to, take you on. And you're 6'6", so you stand out. But if you stand out with a beard and the other clothes, they're not going to bother you. So the picture, is it a picture of him? That's what he looked, he dressed himself the rest of his life as an Egyptian local person. So he meets with the general governor, who hires him. He said, the first thing I want you to do is there is a statue of Ramses in the desert. It is 60 feet tall and the head fell. It is 7.5 tons. We want to get it before the French get it. So would you take the job? Yes, I'll take the job. So he and his wife and his entourage go out and they bring the statue back, which is now in the British Museum, probably separated from the Rosetta Stone by 30 yards. Now what else did Belzoni do? Then he started going out and he discovered the tomb of Seti I. Seti I was the father of Ramses II, the most important of all the pharaohs. Then he found a tomb and a sarcophagus from Seti that was made of pure alabaster. It's gorgeous. He discovered that. And he also, you all know what abyssal is? It's the statues, which we'll cover later, that Ramses built on the Nile of himself that we took apart. He found that, he and his wife and crowd, and they emptied it to sand. So they brought that back to life. And what he would do then is there was a Frenchman with not what you call a lot of ethics, going around buying everything he could to send back to France or wealthy collectors. Well, Belzoni did not like that. But the Frenchman would pay off the local pashas and grand viziers like Thebes. You can't go to Thebes because I made a deal with the pasha. Well, Belzoni would go outside the city walls and start digging, and he would find things. And he found the original entrance that had been lost to the Great Pyramid in Gaza. So this is a man who gets no credit for being the first Egyptologist. Now who gets the credit? They gave it to Howard Carter, who discovered the tomb of King Tut. And they gave it to Lord Carnarvon, who paid for the thing, paid for the Egyptologists. They're not Egypt. Carter was, Carnarvon wasn't. And then there's, Connor, and you can't even think, what did these guys do? It was qualifications. Well, publisher perish. But that's it. That's it over those two. And I'll leave this up because I want to put things before, but these are the men that brought everything to light. So I will pass out now your handbooks.
Are we gonna have a test?
Yes, there'll be a test this time. And you'll be on tape.
There'll be no test. There'll be no test.
No test, of course not.
Amazing.
Did you get one per family?
You got two.
Or one per
Do we all have
person?
one?
Or do we get one per family?
I would say one, I'd like to keep a few copies.
Okay, here's your one.
So one for family would be
Well,
fine.
you're talking.
After it, my daughter wants one, a couple of friends of mine want one.
I don't need one.
An old teacher of mine wants one.
Really old teachers.
Yes.
Have you got one? John's got some. John will pass them on.
Do you want
Jack wants one over there.
No, none of you want one as well.
But I'll hold on to it, but afterwards I'll give it back.
She has one.
Yeah, so.
Take one of them, send them up.
I mean, that's a good point, because,
Yeah, you don't need.
you don't need to.
No.
And they're a pain in the neck to make up.
Oh, I know.
Well, I did the first, and if you follow me page by page, I'll go over. The first page is the sarcophagus of King Tutankhamun. Hen, that was his first name. That's the inner coffin, and that weighed 200 pounds of gold. 200 pounds of gold. Now, if you notice the front portion up here and around here, the colors, they're the beads that you have. That's where they put these beads. They love to put beads. The Egyptians loved gold, silver, right? They didn't go for diamonds, rubies, and okay. Second page. This is the alphabet for one consonant. Now, in the English language, we have 26 letters. Champion, after 5 years, found out the Egyptians had 200.
Wow.
And if you take those variations, there's 2,000. So you look down here, there's an A, look at the A, an A with a hawk or something, stands for something. Imagine the amount of time and trouble it took him to undo this. I don't even know today whether a computer could have done it, because it was trial and error. He thought if he saw a hawk, it may have been, oh, could that mean the wind, or what does the palm tree mean? No, he broke it down. It took him 5 years. No help from anybody but himself. Okay, so that just gives you an idea how complicated this whole thing on hieroglyphics were. Now they could go into the tombs, they could read everything on the walls. They could go to the obelisks, they could go to the temples, they could read everything. And the Egyptians left a lot of papyrus. They left a lot of records that were just rolled up scrolls. Now we can decipher it all. And if we hadn't had the great library fire in Alexandria during the time of Julius Caesar, imagine what we have lost. I mean, all the works of Aristotle, all the works of the great philosophers, all gone. They are still today finding and deciphering papyrus and coming up with new ideas. Still today. It is just, it's incredible. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was, my collecting mood as when I was younger, my daughter came home. And she was in prep school time, I don't know, 8th or 9th grade. I got her a job in an antique store. Well, comes Christmas. Here it is. Dad, I got you a present for Christmas. I open it up. It's a fly swatter. Now, this is not from the ancient Egyptian period, but last night, it's on my, I got it, I got out a little magnifying glass, and I said, geez, what it is. Howard Carter discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922. The tomb is not that big, and I'll have diagrams. It's 1,000 square feet. It took him 2 years to go through it just to get to the sarcophagus. 2 years. There were 5,000 articles in there. So once that was discovered and the world knew about it and it became all popular, wealthy people wanted, of course, to go where? To see it. So this individual, whose name, what do we have here? E.B. Jotner, April the 5th, 1928, Cairo. This was about the time, 26 or 28, that they were opening up, because it was empty to the public. It took 5 years to empty the whole thing. Because they photographed every item, and they took measurements, they dusted them, and it took years just to get it out of the tomb. So this at one time probably had a head of Tutankhamun on it. I said, it's a lovely gift, but who else gets a fly swatter for a gift? And then I looked last night and I'm saying, holy cow, this was done during the time when they were, somebody had money to have it done in silver and put his name on it. And you need, if you've been to Egypt, there are a lot of flies. A lot of flies. So you use this. How many flies? One pharaoh had a servant with him all times, nude veil, covered in honey so the flies would go to him. Now, some of you have been to Egypt? No? A lot of flies, right? A lot of bugs? So this was a big thing to use. They still use them today, I think, but what a nice gift my daughter got. That's my Katie. All right, where am I here now? The next picture is a picture of Egypt, Upper and Lower Egypt. And you will see the Nile, you'll see Lower Egypt is on the Mediterranean and Upper Egypt faces Nubia. And the Nile, you can see the green, follow that up. And I have the main cities covered. There's for the Valley of the Kings, I circled that. I have Luxor, Thebes, the Palace of Amarna, and a great battle where Ramses, which I'll cover. The Nile every year flooded. Every single year, and it would flood its banks anywhere from a mile to 2 to 5 miles. And it left rich deposits of soil, so they always had an abundance of good land to grow things on. Now, what's the worst thing? You see where the line where it says Nubia? If you were an Egyptian, they would kill a lot of people. You know, like the Romans would do it. They would, what's the word I'm using? They would deport you to Nubia. That was the worst thing that could happen. Well, you're going to Nubia. What are you going to do in Nubia? There's no temperature. There's no Egyptian life. There's nobody in your life. And that's where you're stuck for the rest of your life, in Nubia. And that was worse than punishment of death. Now, there's a thing here I have, which I will pass out, because I just found this last night. What did I do with it? I don't have it here. Ah, here it is. Egyptian pharaohs were never seen buried. They always had a crown of some kind. Nobody ever saw a pharaoh, ever, without a crown. In the first, there was the Upper Egypt crown and the Lower Egypt crown. And then in 3118, a king Meneth decided, I'm going to conquer the north. And I'm going to make it one nation with one crown. So he took the crown from Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, combined them. There they are. That's the one with the star that they wear through. That's not in your book. And these are the crowns that they wore over the centuries, and I X'd out the ones that were the ones most widely used. I just found this. I've been looking for it for years and things. Hit the right button and it pops up. So I'll pass that out. But that's important because one thing Egyptians did, both men and women, is they shaved their heads. They did not like the heat, so they all shaved their heads, both men and women. However, they both like to wear wigs. So women would wear wigs that had a part in it. Men would wear wigs that came down straight. This was the wealthy people who wore the wigs. And when you find these mummies today, and you go to the museums, you will see a lot of mummies have wigs on. And they are in tremendous condition. So now the wigs they would fill with little gold and things made out of human hair. The poor also shaved their heads. So when you think about the movies and they're in the ragged, no, their heads are all shaved, white little outfits on. It was not like the movies. Because it was easy to work, you didn't have to, they were worried about cleanliness. They were worried about sweating and all that stuff. So everybody in Egypt basically shaved their heads. So this is the upper and lower Egypt. And one thing I'll tell you about, one of their favorite clothes was cotton. And the world's best cotton still comes from Egypt. Long, staple Egyptian cotton. You know where the second best cotton comes from? Anybody? Seattle, Georgia. How do I know that? When J&J opened the suture division at Ethicon, which I was with, there are thousands of materials, nylon and catgut. There was cotton, because a lot of cotton was used. There's two kinds, Egyptian and Seattle cotton. Still the best cotton in the world. Did you know that?
I know that.
Okie dokie. Now we're going to go to the Valley of the Kings, and I believe I have. Well, I put this together this morning. Wally, would you make sure that's put on? There's two pieces of tape. After they stopped making the pyramids, we're going to cover later, they went to the Valley of the Kings. That's the entrance. What a forbidding place. Now, in your book, you will see the Valley of the Kings, and there are 65 tombs that they have found. I marked those for you in green that, let's see, Ramses II, who was the most powerful of all the Egyptian pharaohs, because his reign lasted 67 years.
Wow.
Now, go back in history, where's the mathematician here? If we took today and went back 67 years, who would be president?
Hoover.
No, I don't think that. I think it would be Truman.
Oh, 67 years.
I mean, think about that. Ramses was the king through how many generations? And he was a very good ruler. He built temples, he built fortifications, he was never beaten in battle, and people loved him. He was a good man. He is, you can see him in the British Museum. You can still see the red hair he had. Problem with the valley, and they only put the tombs in the valley because as soon as a king was buried or a queen was buried, you got grave robbers. There is no tombs, no pyramids ever that have not been gotten into. Just recently, to give you an example, a man in Cairo was digging his basement, boom, out, he pops down, and there is a temple built by an Egyptian pharaoh, and this guy starts looting it. His own country. Well, he's in jail right now. But you take the 4,000 years, they have looted and sold everything. That's why there's really a lot of stuff not left. Other thing about the Valley of the Kings, Egypt in that period of time was different than it is now. It was a rainy season. They had a lot of rain, they had a lot of flowers, plants. Unfortunately, the Valley of the King, if you look where Ramses is, every so many years, it would, torrents of water would come down and flood. And most of the tombs were destroyed. The only one they ever found was King Tut. He was a nobody king, the son of a king, but a nobody. And the only reason they found him is because he was buried quickly. Rushed, you may say. It wasn't even his tomb. He was buried on the floor. They were buried most into the walls. What happens? Waters would come down over the centuries, flood the tombs, spoil them. His was, no. So if you ever go to the Valley of the Kings, you can get into some of these tombs, and I have a diagram of some you may want to go to. Next page.
And
Anybody want the air conditioning?
I'm on.
Ed,
Yes.
were the pyramids and all in this area too?
Yeah, near there, and I'm going to discuss the pyramids as a separate subject.
Okay.
I just wanted to get into some of the Egyptian history. And where do you start? Do you start at the pyramids? Do you start here? It's, you know, you can go all over the place. But when I put the book together, I said, let me do this, and then because the pyramids will be the majority of what we'll talk about.
And let me ask a question.
Yes.
I remember just going to the movies when they would have the explorers, discoverers going into the tombs, and they had all those death traps and things like that. Was that true?
No. Well, I say no. Yes, there were some false doors, and they would find walls that were fake. It never deterred anything. I mean, they could dig straight down. I mean, the king wasn't even in there a week, and they were digging straight down. I mean, they just, and it's the same way today. The Egyptians have destroyed their own history, and they continue to do that. And who is funding all of the studies over the centuries? The British, the Americans, the French, the Belgians, University of Berlin, the Metropolitan, Chicago, and of course the British Museum. The Egyptian Museum itself has been filled by the rest of the world. They did not do a lot of their own excavations. Now, the tombs I have down here I did for one reason, to show you how elaborate some of these tombs are that are dug into the wall. For instance, there's Akhenaten. Anybody heard of Akhenaten? That was the father of King Tut. He was originally buried in Amarna, a city that he built, which I'll just tell you later, and then moved. There was Horemheb, who was a pharaoh that followed shortly after Tut, who was a general, took over. And there was Tutmosis IV, the second, and I have Ramses. If you turn the page, you'll see a picture on Ramses. You have it?
Ramsey too?
Page 5, it shows you, this is it. This one. Okay. Ramses, as I said, lived for 67 years. He had 96 sons. And very popular, he had 60 daughters. His tomb was found a number of years ago, completely blocked. It's the largest tomb in the valley. It's 8,000 square feet. Rubble, floor to ceiling, entrance all the way through it. And there is one Egyptologist who was working on this, taking stone by stone out. And they have another 8, 9, 10 years.
Oh, my.
because as they take it out, they have to shore it up, and the paintings are gone. But recently, just recently, there were, if you look at this, there's, I said the burial chambers, and there was 100 for the sons. They just found a skull in one of them that they think may have been Ramses' first son. They're not sure. They're going to start doing DNA and DNA. Who was Ramses' first son? Anybody in history, anybody in religion want to take a guess? What did Moses do when he came back to Egypt? He said, "Let my people free. I have gotten the 10 Commandments from God. I want my people free." And Ramses said, "No." So what did they bring on? There was the plague, the snakes, all that, and the first born son of the Egyptians, which means Ramses, firstborn, was killed during that plague. And they may have found the skull. Just think of the ramifications of that. If they can do a DNA, I don't know where they can get it, but you know, modern science changes all the time. This could be the biggest find in the history of Egypt, if they can prove it. And he is not going through, you go back and you crawl, I've seen you crawl under a rock and you go 12 feet and you get up and there's another little room and a little room. So when this is finally cleared out, this will be something to see. All the paintings on the wall and everything else are gone because of the flooding. So imagine if they find the son, hey, what did he die of? The bubonic. Oh, imagine how that would change history.
What was his name?
Ramses?
The son.
I do not have it. I do not know his first name. I don't think I've ever read it. If there's a Bible person here who can tell me, I don't remember. He was just the first son of Ramses, and I probably read it, and it's not in my memory bank. I could probably find out for you. If you'd like to, I will.
No.
Come on, it's more
You
research
don't
for
want to
me.
meet him anyway.
Okay. Now we're going to get in a little bit to the pyramids. And if you go to the first pyramid, the pyramid of Dozer. Everybody have that? Hold on, I got another one, Wally. Are these things working out? Are these worth doing?
Yes, oh, absolutely.
Okay, Wally, I got another one to pick up.
All right. Right over the top.
Right over the top, Wally. This is the step period of Dozer, and it was the first period ever built. And when it was built, it was built around a complex of 37 acres. And if you can see, I got an idea, wait a minute. I'm teaching myself to conduct now as well. If you see, right here, that's 37 acres with a step pyramid and a wall that was 33 feet high. The wall's still there, of course, down. The pyramid is still there, and the pyramid looks uneven. But when it was made, it was cast with granite and stone, and then covered in white, highly polished limestone. Gorgeous. That's gone because it was looted. And they had a man here called Imhotep. Imhotep was the king's grand vizier, his architect, He was the first physician, great physician, who treated over 200 known diseases at the time. He was a priest and a mathematician. And Dozier loved him. He was loyal to Dozier, and he built this complex. And it was gorgeous. That's still there, you can still see it, but the wall's still there in pieces. But if you ever go to Gaza, see that one. Egypt's first pyramid. 11 of his children are buried there on the same ground as the father. Okay. Okay, next, I'll talk a little bit about the Temple of Karnak. See that? That was the single largest temple in ancient Egypt ever built. That was ended upon over for centuries. Probably 3 to 4 football fields long. Still not in bad shape. Now, if you see that picture there, they are the columns. So as you walk in, this was added, this is like the third room. And it's the picture of columns. And you asked about putting in the dirt. There are 134 columns in rows of 16. And how they built those is they put these gigantic pieces of granite. They put it down, and they put the next, and they got to the top. And then as they brought them down, they would paint the entire column. Every column is still there, and they'd had a roof, but the Egyptians did not know how to build a roof without columns. Couldn't do it. The reason that I feel, and everything I studied, was when you entered the pyramid, when you entered the temple, the second room, 160 columns, and you feel about this big, you're entering God's palace. So they had you. Then you go to the next room, the next room, the next room, and they had, this is one of my favorites. That room with the columns in it is 50,000 square feet. And this is the room that they, as I said, mentioned to you with the dirt that took them years to do this. And every subsequent pharaoh would add on to that and add on to that. So you got to the very, very back of that, which was the holiest of holiest, which only the priest could go into. Tiny room, and with a statue, gold statue of Amon, the chief god. They still have that statue today, and it is in the Museum of Cairo.
Museum of where, I'm sorry?
Cairo.
Um,
This Karnak is well worth going through. Don't rush through it, but there was a room. It was either here or in the temple in Memphis, I'm not sure which. There was a room in there just for women to go to. And it was a room of women who were trying to conceive, trying to have children. They were having problems. So what they had was a room that they could go into that showed, we would call it indecent now, it was a room of women making love, but with the gods, not man. So they went there and they prayed, and I have some of these gods and I'll show you. The cat god, the alligator god, and it was to kind of free their minds. And maybe go home, and why don't people become pregnant? Other reasons, but they didn't know. So maybe just put their mind at ease. Men were not allowed into that room, and it was just to put their mind at ease. Now both my kids were born with the basal, the thermometer, what was that called? You know, you take the basal thermometer up and down the chart.
It's Catholic.
What?
Catholic.
No, not that, I'm talking about my kids. Well, you know, you come home and you take a chart, your temperature.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I come home from a 4-week trip, exhausted. Oh, my temperature's 98.3 degrees. I said, what? I just got. So we're no different than they are. All right. Next one is how the temple looked in its day. Everything in Egypt, every building, everything was painted royally. The big walls in the front, they're called pylons. And they are the entrance to any city, any main fort, they're the pylons. And they were always built, and on each one of them would be the pharaoh that built them, put all his battle scenes, all his great accomplishments on it. And some of the statues are gone, but basically it's still there. Well worth seeing. Am I moving along okay, or is everybody?
No, we're doing fine.
All right, next one we will start is the Great Sphinx.
You know, going back to this.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm looking at these two different pictures now, so those big buildings are no longer there, it's just the pyramid.
No, the buildings with the columns are there. All the buildings at the Temple of Karnak are still there.
Okay,
But these pylons, these things are still there, but they're not painted.
right, okay.
Now, the statues and some, and all this, if you go into the room with all the columns and you look, you can see the color, the vivid colors. And that's how they know that's still there. But over 4,000 years, the sand and the wind has taken it away. The Great Sphinx.
Now, didn't Johnny Carson and Ed McLean do a routine about Karnak?
Karnak, the magician.
Yeah.
Oh, Karnak, oh yeah, with the letter thing? Yes, yes. Yes. With the big hat? Yeah. Oh, yeah, they were great. You know, your wife's leaving you and you'd open it up and where's my wife? Oh, she's, yeah, I remember that routine. The Great Sphinx is when they're not sure who built it, they're not sure when it was built. Now they think it was built by the son of the pharaoh that built the Great Pyramid at Gaza, which we're going to cover. And this is the Sphinx. Napoleon uncovered the Sphinx. And it is made out of one solid piece of rock. That is not things brought in. That is one column.
Right there.
Right there. It's 200 feet long and 20 feet wide. In its time, the bodies of a lion, it was painted the color of a lion, with the head being painted like a pharaoh's head. And you can see the crown he was wearing. And that was built by Khafre, the son of Khafre who built the Great Pyramid. And they have proven that the Sphinx is one solid. There is no tomb inside it. It's what you see is what you get. And it's still in the original hole it was dug in. And they've had to repair a few of the flaws, but basically it's still there.
What is its purpose?
You know, they really don't know. But the Egyptians had a great affinity or affection for lions. They thought they were the king of the world. And a lion, if you're an Egyptian and could kill a lion, that was like, wow. They were not the jungle of beasts, but they showed power. They still are. So building the body of a lion, the head of a man, who was a pharaoh, and this guy is somebody who you don't want to mess with.
Did they create a religion?
Pardon?
Did they create rituals to go with this kind of a
I
situation?
don't know. There was, yes and no, there was a pharaoh. This was covered at one time after it was built. And a young pharaoh went to sleep. He wasn't a pharaoh, he was a member of the royalty, went to sleep between the palms. But it had been covered, and he heard a voice saying, if you uncover me, you will be pharaoh. So he uncovered it, having to dig it away. This is long before, this is back 3300 BC. Darn if he didn't become pharaoh. So were there rituals there? They don't know. Simple as that.
Is that sandstone? Is that what it's made out of? What type of material is
It's
it?
limestone.
Limestone.
Because the valley in the Gaza Plateau is limestone. So nothing had to be brought in, it was just slaves going to work with the chisels and the copper hammers and building it. Took them years and years. They had the time, what else were they gonna do?
Why did it matter to Napoleon?
But when Napoleon was probably one of the greatest minds. They think that if they could have done an IQ on him, it would have been off the charts. He loved history. He brought, when he went to Egypt, he brought 100 people with him. Painters, scientists, people of great culture to study about this. They hadn't broken the code yet. And he wanted to learn about it. He said, how could these things go back 1,000 years and last, and we know nothing about it? When he got, so it was due to him, and he said, uncover it. When you're in the military and you go to an area, you want to keep your men busy. So we had different things being done. That's a good question. And I don't know if even the experts know the answer on that. The next one, picture, is the bent pyramid. The second pyramid built by King Snuffer. This guy likes to build pyramids. He builds the pyramid, it's bent. It's 24 miles south of Cairo. I'm gonna take this off. See what it works. It's 24, and he was a king, and he wanted to build a pyramid. They couldn't quite get perfect. So I'm gonna try again. So he wasn't buried in this one. But he builds another pyramid. If you go, skip 2 pages to the pyramid called the Red Pyramid. Right after that, one more page. Red Pyramid, everybody have it? This is the pyramid built by someone that he liked, and this is where he was buried. It's the perfect pyramid. It's called the Red Pyramid because that's the way the stone appears. However, at one time it was covered in highly polished white limestone. White limestone is native of the plateau. So they didn't have to bring granite. The quarries are still on the plateau. They would take these and then they would cover them in limestone, which big blocks, but they polish them with sand and brick, so they were gleaming white. He finally got it right, and that's where he goes.
Ed,
Yes.
what is the significance of a pyramidal shape? today we have, I don't know, there are myths or whatever about having a pyramid and underneath it you put.
The
your
lucky
ring.
thing,
Yeah,
you know, in all my readings, I could never find out why they did that. I don't know.
okay.
But it's a good question, but there must be something that I either missed in all the work I did, or I have no idea.
Maybe it's the same idea as a spire.
Yeah. Well, I think why, they could build them big. You can't make a square building. But a pyramid, you can take it outwards. And it was, they all faced a certain way, they were all built the same angles. And when we get to the Great Pyramid, you'll see a lot more of these answers. Let me see what I have on here. Oh, they may use it. So, third pyramid built, he likes it, that's where he's really buried, and that's where he was buried. Of course, it's empty now, robbed, clean, gone.
Are they all four-sided?
Yes.
The picture here kind of indicates they were flat sides, not step.
Well, they were stepped, but the steps were filled in with the white limestone.
Yeah.
And we'll see that in the Great Pyramid. In fact, I may have it. Did I give you that yet? And I'll hold off on that. Again, this was the most successfully built and the fourth largest ever built. Next is Luxor Temple, very much the same as Karnak. It's the east end of the Nile. It was founded in 1400 BC. And it was the second most popular temple in Egypt ever built. Okay, here we go. How long have I been talking?
Did we start at 1:30?
Oh, God, I was sooner than that, wasn't I?